Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Now I'm going to be introducing our first speaker. Her name is Phyllis Lerner. She's a faculty associate working with the Johns Hopkins University School of Education Teach for America program. Her background includes decades of work at the California State Department of Education's Title IX Gender Equity Office and the Los Angeles Educational Equity Center. Phyllis was the USA delegate leader to the Children's International Summer Village, the CISV in Sweden in 1973. Since then, she was returned to global education efforts, including 6 more years with CISV, working in Mumbai, India, and Western Thailand's Burmese refugee camps with the American Jewish World Service. She is best described by the titles she honored from 5 recent semesters with Akahozo Shalom Youth Village in Rwanda, which are auntie and teacher. Phyllis is a new mentor to our Shikan team, welcoming scholar Srito Van, known as Jess, from Cambodia.
Thank you so much for a warm and accurate introduction. I hope I appear in the box pretty soon. I am still seeing my famous introduction lead.
Oh yeah, there we go.
No, we can see you.
Okay, then I'll just fake it. Let's go back to the previous slide. This is strange, but all the planning.
It says cold weather yesterday, not fun. Is that the slide you want up?
That's good. And when I speak, I would expect to see me in the box next door, and I see you, Barbara. So maybe I need to spotlight myself.
I see you.
All right, then that's all that I care about.
Okay.
First thing you need to notice is that I've had a haircut since that original photo. But yesterday we started at our Shikan Summit talking about ice cubes. And somehow when I was asked to share something kind of fun and unusual about me, I thought I would show you me as an ice cube. Where I live right now, we've had a considerable amount of snow, and I went out for a walk yesterday. And you know, when we did the metaphor about ice cubes, the top of the ice cube is what we didn't talk about. Those soft, but really hard, important skills. So this is the top of me. And the way I'm standing in this frame is hopefully you can see a little bit of the rest of me, but trust me, there's plenty of ice cube down below. I don't like cold weather. Those of you that are in the West Coast, I wish I was with you. Okay, that's my extra added attraction. The next slide. What we're going to focus on today are presentation skills. And that's part of the reason I'm standing up, because it gives me a chance to move close to the screen. It gives me a chance to use my hands and for you to see a bit more of the ice cube. If you click one more time, you're going to find out we have 5 big ideas. These are the 5 ideas that we're going to carry forward as we continue the presentation. Next one. Here they are. You're going to practice, learn, laugh about all of these. I won't spend a great detail view now, but most of all, these 5 include facial expressions. What do we do with this part? Hands that help us or detract from presenting. The eye contact we have, which is pretty bizarre in Zoom. The way we use our voice, and then the movement we have as we're speaking. In order for you to best understand and practice these skills, we've created a little note-taking device, and that's on the next slide. Now, I made this one by hand. I'm going to give you a minute to do it because it was part of your pre-task notebook. I also know that there was a link to a cleaner hard copy. So if you have a piece of paper and something to write with, I would be grateful if you created a chart that looked like this. And while you're drawing, you'll notice the key terms. Number 1, facial expression, hands, eye contact, voice, has several ideas. These may be new words for you: pitch, speed, and volume. And finally, the 5th one, movement. Those are the big ideas that I'm going to do some talking about and you're going to do some doing about. In the box on the right side of the paper, this is your place to take notes. And it's helpful when you take notes in any college or university class that you put the words down in your own words. If you just write down what the professor or the presenter said, it often doesn't give you a chance to deepen your understanding. If you've completed your chart and you're ready to go on, would you show me by putting a thumb up? And Grace, I don't understand why I still can't see myself and still see Barb on the right side of the screen. Barb is delightful.
It might be that somehow you have Barb pinned on your view, or do you see me now that I'm talking?
I see you.
Oh, interesting.
I think interesting is where we're going to have to leave it.
I did see a lot of thumbs up though when you
All
did
right,
ask that
good.
question.
That's
Yeah.
good. I need all the back coaches I can. So let's go to the next slide. All right. What counts as we look at presentation is our general use of communication. And in any language, there are typically 4 ways to communicate. They are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Interestingly enough, in college and university, we spend a huge amount of time, perhaps too much time, reading and writing. And yet the way we learn to speak as infants is listening first and then speaking. Some of you are speaking in your first language in your university scholar opportunities. Some of you may be speaking in a second or third language. So I'm going to focus on more speaking today because the way you present yourself informally, whether you meet your mentors for the first time and you hug them or not, or you give them an elbow bump these days, or you give them a formal handshake, all of those things have to do with the verb you present yourself. But there's also the noun. There's your presentation. And I've noticed in college and universities that a lot of people pay a lot more attention to what they read and wrote, and they hold a paper and they read their report, and we don't get to see who they are. So I want to focus on the categories about you that have to do with your ability to present. Now, I promise you there are cultural differences across the globe. There are cultural differences across the United States. There are cultural differences across and between gender, race, ethnicity, language, age. The first time I went to Rwanda, when people greeted me with such open faces, they would take their hand and shake my hand and hold onto their elbow. I was really confused. I thought maybe everybody's arm was injured. And then I found out the respectful way in Rwanda to meet a senior citizen is to demonstrate that respect by holding the elbow. Today, I don't know how we're going to kind of greet people. I'm all by myself in my office and I'm greeting you as much as I can with my enthusiasm. There are a few of you I've hugged before. Davina, who is at Georgetown, And Ornella, I know you're somewhere out there, probably as cold as I am. Okay, so that's the setup. I want this presentation to empower you to take whatever cultural presentation skills you have and let them show up in this English language world. That means whether you're with a formal group presenting in class or whether you're informal, meeting your mentor's family's dog or new friends. All right, number one, make any notes in the box you feel that will help you to remember what we've done today. You want to try to use an open face because that's inviting to people. Now, if I get really close to the screen, I'm going to try to do my best to show you that I'm really sitting on the edge of my seat, trying to hear what you're seeing and saying. But some people have a closed face. And the moment you look at them, you know they're not letting you into their world. So try to have an open face, be relaxed, be available, and don't be so serious that you're not even yourself. The important thing about a facial expression is it should represent the emotion that you're sharing. If I have a child and my child goes running across the street in the middle of traffic in Cambodia, I'm gonna show you with my face that I'm terrified. And I know I snuck my voice in too. But if my face is just flat, or I'm smiling and say, I really love the way you went out in between the trucks, the language does not align with the facial expression. So try to be aware of, is your face showing you openly what you intend to say and share with your audience? Make a few notes. Think about yourself, and let's go to the next slide. This one is amazing, especially when I spent my yesterday walk as an iceberg and my hands were in my pockets all the time. How do we use hands to communicate? When you're comfortable or when you're uncomfortable? And our goal is that when you present, you're so comfortable, you can have your hands represent your story. If I'm holding a paper and really nervous, you'll probably notice that. So let's go to the next slide. These are the two most common patterns I see, and they are often gendered. When females or young girls and women communicate, they have a tendency to hold on to their hair and twirl it around, or they do the hair flip or the hair stretch. I'm not sure all these things have names. They move a weave back and forth a bit. Girls tend to play with their hair when they're actually presenting, when they're nervous. Boys put their hands in their pockets. If there's money in there, they'll play with it. If there's keys, you'll know it. And their hands get stuck there, often for far too long. So try to use your hands to help you tell the story. If you're talking about a huge tree, let your hand show that the tree is big and it will engage your audience. But if you're talking about a mosquito that's so small that even though it's small, it's in your tent at night and driving you crazy, let your hands help tell the story. Next slide. One of the things I really wanted to give its own moment in time is the thing that most young people have in their hands all the time. So when you go in to meet a professor or you're going for a job interview, or even if you come to dinner at my house, I actually have something called the cell phone basket. And I ask people to put the cell phone in the basket so that we can be present in the present. When you go to a job interview, if you leave your phone on the table, that's a message to the people interviewing you that that information on the phone is more important than the one right in front of your face. So I beg you, as a senior, as a professor, that there are times to let go of it, turn it off, and put it away. It will serve all of us better because it's symptomatic of respect. The next slide. Eye contact. This is an issue of culture. And at times, some young people are suggested or told that they're not supposed to look at someone older directly in the eye. There are other times when teachers who are angry will get near you and say, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." If you look at someone's dog eyeball to eyeball, that might set up a pattern of aggression. Those of us who have seen the gorillas in Rwanda know that indirect eye contact steps us down and puts us in a safer place. So I'm going to suggest to you that eye contact is important, and it matters because it's a great way to bring people into your story and let them know, Sinette, that I'm looking at you. And if I call that name and I give you that eye contact, I noticed her head just kind of came up and looked at me. It was not at all pejorative, and now she's even smiling. So we can use eye contact in a positive way to get people engaged. In general, it's suggested that we don't just kind of roam around the room with eye contact and be mechanical, but that you actually find face by face someone to look at, Tarlee, and give them about 3 seconds and then go on to someone else. I observe a lot of classrooms on Zoom, and I have to tell you, people often have their eyes down looking at their cell phone, or their cameras up looking at the ceiling. So try and stay within the radar. Another very valuable thing about eye contact is to know that it can change with your environment. So that if you're meeting someone who's older and part of your culture is to put your eyelids down and a slight bow, please know that's who you are. We can translate to that, but use your eyes to get the whole audience in as often as you can. Try some notes. Let's go to the next slide. This may be the toughest one for people who are speaking second and third languages, because there is a rhythm when you're speaking your first language that you feel good about. And I certainly know in my work in Rwanda that when students are speaking Kinyarwanda, their voices go up and down with the pitch, speed, and volume. And then when they try to speak English the first year, it is very hard. And it doesn't sound like the same person. So as you get better with English, as you get better with presenting, here are the things you want to concentrate on. Pitch. When you're talking about the top of the iceberg, does your voice go high? And when you're talking about the iceberg that is deep in the water, in a place where we can't see it, does your voice go down? Speed. Speed has to demonstrate your enthusiasm for what you're saying. If I'm really excited that we're going to go to the ice cream shop, even though I'm freezing cold, you're going to know it because I'm going to talk fast, and then I'll probably walk fast to get there. but there are times when my heart is broken and I want to speak slowly because I need the pause between my words to show you my heart. Fast and slow. And finally, volume. There are times when I teach class and I may get my voice so quiet. I want my graduate students to lean forward from their desks so that they can hear everything I'm saying. And then there are times when I want to excite them and speak in a loud voice so that everyone can hear and know that we're in it together. Pitch, speed, volume, all part of every language, and yet very different by your first and other languages. Try some notes. Off to the next slide. Movement. Well, this one is fascinating because in my experience, if you're about 20 years old and a rap singer and you're on a stage, you never stand still. You're always moving everywhere, which is not very conducive to a Zoom workshop. Sometimes when you're asked to speak in a college class and do a presentation, the pattern is you stand still. I'm going to encourage you to find a balance. And one of the things I want you to understand is what we're going to avoid first. There are times in your life as a scholar and a future professional that you will be given a podium to stand behind and a microphone. And there's a small picture of a podium there. And you see the two characters who are speaking are hiding behind it. One of my concerns is whoever invented the podium did it in America for the average size male. So when I speak at a podium, almost all of my body is under the water or under the podium. And all you get is a floating head if you're out in the audience. So I work to feel comfortable enough about myself that I can put my arm on the podium if I need to and stand beside it. I don't want to hide who I am. And that's a challenge. Often I would rather have a mic in my hand or a headset so that I'm not locked into being in a particular place. Let's go to the next slide. Being aware of your movement is probably the most important thing. As an educator, one of the things I know is that many teachers in your childhood may have stood by a chalkboard for 5 hours a day. And there were so many students sitting on the floor or sitting on a wooden bench that they couldn't even get to you. And if you loved that teacher, you would rush into class in the morning and you would try and sit in the front row. And if you didn't like school, you might go way to the back and hide yourself because you knew the teacher would never get nearby. So I want you to think about your college classes from the fall. If you had live classes, how many of your professors stayed at the front because they had to be near their computer at all times? And if they did, where did you position yourself? There's research that college professors think more highly and hold higher expectations for students who are in the first 3 rows. If you sit in the back of the class, you are detached from them, and they will lose track of who you are. So be brave and courageous, even if you didn't do your homework. Get there early and move to the front of the room, and that in itself will typically allow a professor to think that you have more commitment to your academics. Now, when you are presenting, it's important that you do move, but not like a rap musician. You're going to plant yourself in certain spots when it matters. That means you might want to walk around to get the whole room engaged. And then when you say the most important thing, you stop. You take a breath and you make the statement to move as a part of gathering energy, but stop when you need to say something really important. Like, let's go to the next slide. Be aware of your movement. Sometimes I invite students in my classes to do a graphic chart of where I've been, and over the course of a 40 or 50-minute class, I try to make sure I'm within arm's distance of everybody. Equal opportunity. Not just students who need me, but students who also want me. And when I've got something important to say, they know because I stop, I connect, and then speak. Next slide. Find out what you're doing and use your movement so that nobody zones out. Next one. All right. Time to get active. I'm the only one that's gotten any calories burned. We're going to do a little 3-minute partner activity, and I'm going to model it with you for a second. So take notes on this if you need it. You're going to be put in breakout rooms, and you're going to have 3 minutes to talk about this question that I'm asking. Let's see what we've got. Whoa, it flew across the screen. For 1 minute, each of you, there are going to be 3 people in each group, I hope. Each of you is going to talk a little bit about your own style in your first language. That means the person you were before you came to the United States. How did you use these 5 ideas in your community, in your culture? That's 1 minute. And then you're also going to, in that 1 minute, talk about how do you use those 5 now when you're speaking English in college, in an academic or friendly community. Got it? Each person will talk for a minute. How do those 5 ideas show up in your first language, in your home? And how do those 5 presentation skills show up for you currently when you're at the university in English? And thanks to Grace and Hannah and Dean and all the people in the back room, something magic is going to happen now.
Yes.
Here we
Madison,
go. Everybody ready? We're going to go into breakouts.
It is very typical. Nope, I'm going to fix that sentence. It was very typical before the pandemic for people to greet each other by shaking hands. And there is a pattern that older people are the leaders to that. So when an older person puts out their hand, the younger person is supposed to follow. It's also a pattern that men used to lead, and women would pose their hand rather than offer it as a handshake. Mentors, you can discuss this or play through some acting with your scholars. When you put your hand like this, it kind of says you're more interested in being pet than it does being an equal partner. So when you shake hands, you want to have what all of us would call a firm handshake. Sometimes, and practice the bad stuff, because the bad stuff is fun. Practice what we call the wet, dead fish handshake. You kind of put your hand out and it kind of just like sits there for a while. And the person who's shaking your hand is going like this and you're just going like that. It's not a shared partnership, it's not equal. So when someone poses their hand to you, consider it a great courtesy, a good way to start a relationship, certainly well before hugging. And then the other trick is to hold on and shake a little bit, but probably only for 2 to 3 seconds. Have you ever had somebody, especially an older male, put their hand out to you and then hold on to it? And you're kind of going, uh-oh, this feels really gross, creepy. I think this man wants to do more than hold my hand. And I'm seeing a lot of American smiles laughing on that. So please know, hand, firm, shake, 2, and then get it back so it's attached to you. Fair enough? All right. You had a chance to talk with your scholar friends about how you use your body differently when you're speaking Khmer or Kinyarwanda or Spanish or French. Trust me, I'm very different when I speak Spanish. I'm kind of like a 2-year-old and I have about that equal vocabulary. So I want you to know that and internalize that and know those 5 skills so you can begin to work on formal and informal presentations. Let's go back to the slides now, if we may. And set up your screen so you can see me. So we're half and half space. All right. You're going to get into breakout groups again, and this is your bigger, better challenge for the morning. You're going to use all 5 ideas: facial expression, hands, eye contact, your voice, and hopefully some movement. And you are going to share with your friends the story of your name. It could be your first name, your last name, your family name. It could be done in the language of your culture. If you have a nickname that you are proud of and want to share, it could be that. You're going to share with your friends using all 5 of these skills why you're called who you are. And I'm going to give you an example, and you're going to have about 2 minutes each to do this. I don't think you have to study to know your name. If you have no idea why you're called what you're called, then I encourage you to check with your first family and ask, because they may have a very interesting story for you. In my case, I'm going to use my first name, which is Phyllis. And in my culture, we are named in the Jewish faith after a relative who was cherished and has already died. So I was named after my great-grandmother, who was Russian, and she only spoke the language called Yiddish. Her name was Fagala, which in English means little bird. So she died many, many years before I was born, and my parents wanted to honor her And they didn't want to call me Fagala because they thought that name in the middle of Washington, D.C. might not be very acceptable. But they liked the little bird idea. So one of the ideas they had was robin, a small bird that's pretty common in this area. But they didn't go with that. They went with a name that's a sound-alike. For Fagala, they went with Phyllis. And I was very grateful to have that name because in all of my schooling, until I got to college, I was almost the only Phyllis in my classrooms. Nobody knew how to spell it, but almost everybody remembered it. That's my story. And I did that in under 2 minutes. Now, I hope that I used facial expressions, hands, eye contact, voice, and movement. You're going to go into your breakout rooms, share your name story as best as you can, and it would be great if your colleagues gave you a little bit of feedback about how you did. If you need to stand up so you can use your hands, please feel free to do that. See if that works for you. You're going to probably have 2 minutes each, and then we're going to come back for a final wrap up. Okay? On your mark, get set, cross your fingers, goodbye.